Right. Well, I'm going to step up to the plate for a few minutes and tell you a little bit about the research that Target Ovarian Cancer is concerned with. It's been my privilege, as Anwen said at the beginning, to chair the Scientific Advisory Committee for the last 5 years. And one of the motivations for that is that I know that I'm biased, I'm a clinical academic, but there's no doubt that the more you spend on research, the more you will learn about how to improve healthcare. And the fact of the matter is that ovarian cancer has to compete with all the other cancers and indeed all the other human conditions for publicly funded research. So charitable funding is important. And the thing about Target Ovarian Cancer is that it's entirely dedicated to ovarian cancer. And so their contribution to research is extremely important. Now, when we began to talk about the approach that Target Ovarian Cancer would take towards research, there were several guiding principles that were unanimously agreed. The first was that Target Ovarian Cancer wasn't just going to fund a single group or a single department somewhere. It was going to allow UK-wide access so that the best of what could be proffered for research funding from around the UK could be proffered to Target Ovarian Cancer. They established this scientific advisory board, which brings together a number of people who are knowledgeable about ovarian cancer and ovarian cancer research, and are able to provide a rigorous review of the grants to ensure that what's funded is actually the best that was offered. This also involves what's called peer review. So there are researchers around the world who have volunteered to contribute their thinking towards the application. So typically an application would go to somebody in the United States who would write a 2-page review or whatever, explaining whether the study ought to be supported or not. And as we've heard from Justin, we have late input into this process. And so we sit around the table and select what it is that we want to fund. And the competition is fierce because there are a number of very capable groups in this country who conduct ovarian cancer research, and the charity can only fund so much. Charity is also a member of the Association of Medical Research Charities. Is that the Association of Medical Research Charities? And they have a sort of set of standards that they like to impose to make sure that the charity is functioning in an appropriate way when it comes to medical research and not breaking a number of ethical rules or falling below standards that people who raise money for the charity might expect to be in place. It's axiomatic that the research that is funded, which involves money that's been hard to obtain, is only spent on the highest quality of research. So we're not going to recommend to the trustees that money be spent on research that we think is unlikely to yield anything of any value. It's really important to try to ensure that money is going to have some sort of an impact. It's a tough quest to go from a position of relative ignorance to rolling out new treatments in the clinic. That is a long, hard road, and the attrition of ideas is quite high. So things that you might think would be a good approach just don't survive years of investigation, and so there's no guarantee that any given project is absolutely going to have an impact, but by being as selective as possible and by picking areas that the charity, whichever charity it is, wishes to focus on, is probably the best way not to spread the butter too thinly all over the place. So what Target Ovarian Cancer do not fund are clinical trials. Clinical trials are very important. They can be very impactful, but they are actually in this country very well funded by what's called NIHR. So there's a lot of public funding goes into clinical trials, and Target Ovarian Cancer do not need to compete with the public funding to run clinical trials. Translational research is the area of research that Target has chosen to concentrate to a large extent on. So by translational research, we mean using scientific insight to try to identify, by increasing our insight as to how precisely tumours operate, we can then try and find bespoke ways of affecting the cancer cell. So instead of old-fashioned, if you like, or what has been conventional chemotherapy, we're trying to find keys that will fit into locks and open doors. So that has become possible with the advances in scientific technology and research in the last 20 years, 25 years. There's been a logarithmic increase in our ability to develop our understanding of cancer. It also supports palliative research because palliation and support of people who have got end-of-life symptoms is a really big, important challenge, and trying to find ways of improving that is a very important endeavour. And the other area that's important is to try and develop the researchers for the future, because everybody eventually gives up, retires, dies, whatever, and we have to keep developing the researchers for the future so that this country continues to have people who want to conduct ovarian cancer research. And you can't just take that for granted, you've got to work at that. And Target Ovarian Cancer have been accepted as a partner with the Medical Research Council to provide part funding, which the MRC matches, for suitable, talented young people to undertake suitable research. So a large amount of money has been identified, almost £1 million has been identified for making research awards. In general, these awards amount to around £200,000 for each translational project, and perhaps up to £75,000 for palliative care projects. And the research fellowships also cost about £250,000, but they're shared with the Medical Research Council. And so the challenge is there for the charity to keep producing the money, because the more money it spends on research, the more likelihood there is that it will make an important breakthrough. So just some very, very brief examples. Taxol is one of the key drugs which is used in tandem with platinum, as many of you know. And if we can try to overcome resistance, just as we've got resistance to platinum, there's resistance